Good day! For today's lesson, we'll have the GUI layout managers. But first, let's have the definition of layout. Layout refers to the arrangement of components within the container. In another way, it could be said that layout is placing the components at a particular position within the container. The task of laying out the controls are done automatically by the layout manager. Layout managers facilitates us to control the positioning and size of the components. It is an interface that is implemented by all of the classes of layout managers. So, in inserting components into our GUI or into our Java GUI, we need to lay out them using a certain layout manager. It is associated with every container object, and the properties like size, shape, and arrangement varies from one layout manager to the other. This means that when the size of the application window changes, the size, shape, and arrangement of the components also changes in response, such as the layout managers will adapt to the dimension of the application window. We have here classes that represent layout managers. We have FlowLayout, BorderLayout, GridLayout, CardLayout, GridBagLayout, BoxLayout, GroupLayout, ScrollPaneLayout, and SpringLayout. So for today's lesson, I will discuss the commonly used layout managers. We have FlowLayout, BorderLayout, and GridLayout. Let's start with FlowLayout. So the FlowLayout class places components sequentially in a row from left to right in the order they are added. If the horizontal space in the container is too small to put all the components in one row, the FlowLayout class uses multiple rows. So in this example, ang unang na-add sa container is the button 1. So if the button 1 has been inserted first, automatically ma-add siya sa gitna. But when more components are added into the container, mag-a-adjust yung position and mapupunta sa left going to the right. So here we have 5 buttons sa first row. Since there is no more space in the first row, mag-recreate na ng another row for the another components. We have here the radio buttons and another button. So, dito, kung may madadagdag ulit na another component, mag-a-adjust ulit itong mga ito to the left. We have constructors of FlowLayout class. We have the FlowLayout with an empty parameter, which creates a FlowLayout with centered alignment and a default 5-pixel horizontal and vertical gap. So, automatic, the alignment is displayed at center and mag-a-adjust siya papunta sa left if there is another inserted component. The horizontal and vertical gap na tinutukoy dito is, balikan natin yung example natin, the horizontal gap that we're referring here is the space between components from left to right. So, etong part na ito ang tinutukoy na horizontal space. When we say vertical space, components from top to bottom. So, ito naman yung tinutukoy na vertical gap. So, if we'll be using empty parameter, the default 5-pixel unit ang mai-layout. If we have FlowLayout and the parameter int align, creating a FlowLayout with the given alignment, and again, a default 5-pixel horizontal and vertical gap. The alignment that we're referring here can be FlowLayout.left, FlowLayout.center, and FlowLayout.right. And lastly, we have the 3 parameters referring to the alignment, H gap, and V gap. So it creates a flow layout with a given alignment such as left, center, and right, and the given horizontal and vertical gap. Meaning, magsiset na tayo dito ng spaces between the components. Let's proceed with border layout. For border layout, it is the default layout manager for all windows such as frames and dialogues. It uses 5 regions to hold components: north, south, east, west, and center. Each region or area may contain one component only. All extra space is placed in the center area. So we have this one. So the topmost region is the north, the bottommost south, left, we have west, right, we have east, and we have at the center. In terms of the constructor of the border layout class, we have the border layout with an empty parameter, which creates a border layout with no gaps between the components. But if there is 2 parameters referring to the horizontal and vertical gap. And lastly, we have the grid layout. Grid layout is a class that lays out a container's components in a rectangular grid. It arranges the components into rows and columns. So in this example, it arranges 3 row by 2 columns. So this is 3 by 2. We have the constructors of grid layout class. We have the first one, grid layout with an empty parameter, which creates a grid layout with 1 column per component in a row. Next, we have 2 integer values as the parameter, referring to the given rows and columns, but no gaps between the components. So the first parameter is the row and then the column. And lastly, if we have 4 parameters, naidagdag ulit yung H gap and vertical gap, spaces between the components. So for now, let's apply flow layout, border layout, and grid layout. So let's start with, we'll import the needed packages. We need the java.awt for layout manager, for custom graphics, and for our containers. So if we'll specify it one by one, we have import java.awt for our layout manager. For this example, we'll start with flow layout, and then we may have another. We'll be needing AWT referring to the container. And later on, for font, color, ito yung mga classes na gagamitin natin, kaya we need to import java.awt. For javax.swing, we'll be needing that for our JFrame, which serves as our top-level container. We may have it also the component, which is our JButton. So, since ang i-insert lang natin ay JButton, so isa na lang munang ilalagay natin dyan. So, that is how are we going to import the needed packages together with its classes. Sa mga naunang discussion natin, ang ginagamit na natin is the asterisk. Meaning, pag ginamit natin yung asterisk, we'll access all of the classes in that particular package. So, didiscuss ko lang ito para alam kung ano yung gamit ng AWT at ng suite. So, if you still prefer to use java.awt.asterisk, it would be okay. Import javax.suite. So, I think it would be better kung ito yung i-practice din para alam kung ano yung mga gagamiting classes in that package. Okay, next, we have the class declaration. So, this is public class. The name of our file is Layout Manager Demo, extends JFrame. So, itong mga steps ay na-discuss na rin sa mga previous lectures natin. Okay, next, we'll declare for the container. So, we'll have it private container. Gawin natin panel. So, for the meantime, di muna tayo gagamit ng panel. We'll just add the J button. So, private J button. Example na lang, button 1 because we'll identify button 1 up to button 5. Next, let's have the constructor declaration. By the way, this is step 3. Kahit na-skip na yan, basta yung codes dito mapupunta at step 8. For constructor declaration, same name with the class. Layout Manager Demo. We'll have to declare it also as public. Let's set for the frame such as title, size, and display center. For title, we have set title, and then we'll have it Layout Manager Demo. Size, we can have it 450 by 150 pixel. So 450, we're referring to the width, and 150 for the height. And if we want to display it at center screen, set location relative to null. Next, let's get the content pane via the get content pane. So the name of our container is con. So we have con is equal to get content pane. We'll set the layout manager using the container. So our reference to container is con.set layout new. So we'll explore the first one, new flow layout with an empty parameter. Okay, next, instantiate via new operator and set all the panel or components needed in the layout. So ang ginamit lang natin dito ay J button. So we'll instantiate them. Button 1 is equal to new J button. We'll label it button 1. And we'll just copy and then edit later on. Button 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 2, 3, 4, and 5. So for the meantime, eto na lang muna. Saka na lang natin pagandahin. So let's proceed to step 9. We'll add the components into the container. Since wala pa tayong panel, ang i-add lang natin ay the buttons. We'll use our reference to container con.add. We have button 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. For step 10, we'll register the source with listener. So for the meantime, skip natin muna ito. Then, end of constructor, event handler. So, again, we'll skip this portion. Later on, i-code na natin for action event or any events. Then, next, we have the main method declaration. Declare an instance of the class layout manager demo. So, we'll call this part na. So, babasahin na niya yan. Okay, so we have it. Demo is equal to new layout manager demo. Sets the class to be visible using our reference demo. So demo.set visible true. And lastly, we have will terminate the IDE automatically once the GUI program exits or closes. So demo.set default close operation jframe exit on close. So ang gamit nito, kapag close na natin yung GUI natin, mata-terminate na rin yung ating IDE. Okay? And then the end of the main method and class. So we have explored the first one, which is the new flow layout with empty parameter. So if we'll try to compile and run our program, so by default, the display is sa center. Tapos kung may panibago, mag-a-adjust siya sa left. Okay? Let's explore the next one. We'll provide the alignment. So, dito ulit sa step 7. So, we'll specify the alignment. FlowLayout.left. So, if we'll have FlowLayout.left, ito yung output. Okay? So, from center kanina, automatic na i-set na siya sa left. Same is true with right. For right, ganyan naman. Okay. And of course, if we'll have the center, center. Okay. Next, if we'll apply with horizontal gap and vertical gap, idagdag na lang natin dito. So, gawin natin tong 10, yung horizontal gap, and 20 para ma-spot lang yung difference ng horizontal at vertical gap. Okay? So, that's it. When we say horizontal gap, spaces between button 1, button 2, button 2 to button 3, button 3, and button 4. For vertical gap, yung gap from top to the bottom. And so, in this example, button 3 to button 5. So, yung gap na yan, that is the vertical gap. Next, let's have the border layout. For border layout, so we'll change this border layout. And then, with empty parameter. So, what would happen if we'll just play this one? Considering na wala pa tayong dinadagdag dito. Okay, let's build. First. So, there is a syntax or compile error. We have, it cannot find symbol class border layout. That is because ang na-import lang natin dito kay java.awt is the FlowLayout. So, kailangan specify mo na ang gagamitin mo is border layout. Ang kagandahan rin ng paggamit minsan ng asterisk. So, kung gawin na lang natin ganito, pwede din. Okay? Next, let's again build and run. Okay? So, if you will notice, button 5 lang ang naka-display because we haven't included the particular position of the buttons here. Kasi ang gamit natin is border layout. So, ang nangyari, pag hindi natin in-specify dito, yung region is matatabunan. So, ang unang na-insert dyan, 1, 2, 3, 4, and yung 5. Kaya ito na lang yung nakikita. So, in order for us to display those buttons, since we have used the border layout, we need to include on step 9, border layout dot north. So, yung button 1 is nasa north. Then, button 2, display natin sa west. Then, yung button 3, center. Then, button 4, east. And then, button 5, south. Okay, so dito, magiging applicable yung regions in adding to the container. Let's again build and run. Okay. So, ito na yon. It has specified the regions. Button 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next, let's apply again on the constructor having a vertical gap and horizontal gap. So, let's start with the horizontal gap. 10 and 25. Okay, let's try. Okay, so yon. Hindi na kagad nag-appear because of the size. Okay, so yan na yon. So, this is the vertical, this is the horizontal gap. How about kung explore natin, kung what if nawala ang isa, what would happen? For example, wala tayong nilagay na component sa north, what would happen? It will be occupied by components from west, center, and east. So, same is true, kung naalis rin yung sa south, i-occupy ng west, center, and east. How about if yung west, it will be occupied by the component from the center. Same is true, pag wala rin ito, it will be occupied by center. How about if yung mismong center ang mawala? So, the positioning is as it is. Walang marireplace na component sa center. So, that is for border layout. So, for grid layout, we'll change this to grid layout and alisin na rin natin ito. Actually, we can combine all of these layout managers at the same time. Okay, pwede natin silang i-combine. But for now, let's have it per layout manager first. So for grid layout, having an empty parameter, let's try what would be the output. Okay, it arranges in one row. Next, how about if we have it 2 by 3? So there are 2 rows and 3 columns. It's empty kasi nga yung buttons lang na na-insert natin are only 5. If we have it 2 by 3, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So this is commonly used for building GUI calculators. How about if we are going to apply for a JPanel? So it would vary na sa positioning kung border layout, and same is true for the grid layout, the number of row and column. Okay, so let's try to apply JPanel sa 5 buttons. The first 3 buttons under panel 1, and then the remaining 2 buttons for panel 2. Okay, so we'll have it here. Dagdag natin siya dito. So private JPanel, panel 1, and then panel 2. Next, we'll declare for an instance of panel 1 and panel 2. Panel 1 is equal to new JPanel, and panel 2 is equal to new JPanel. Okay, next. So, ang mangyayari na dito, i-add natin yung button 1, 2, and 3 sa panel 1. And then, for button 4 and 5, we'll have it panel 2. And then, ang i-add na lang natin sa container is panel 1 and panel 2. Since nailagay na natin yung mga components sa kanilang panel. Okay? So, if we'll try to have this, so hindi na 2 by 3. It is counted already as, if we'll have it here, so this is counted as 1, 2, 2 rows, and 1 column na lang. Kasi counted na siya as 1. 2 by 1. Let's try. Kahit na i-resize nyo yan, okay, hindi sila mapaghihiwalay kasi considered as one panel. Ito at ito. Okay? If you'll apply border layout, so lagay natin, itong isa ay sa north, yung isa ay sa south. Okay, let's try. So, yan. Then, so, ibig sabihin, yung center, east and west are not occupied. So, this is on north, and ito yung sa south. So, that would vary to the position and for grid layout, number of rows and columns kung gumamit na ng panel. We can explore also adding positions or adding specific layout to our panels. So for the meantime, yan na lang muna the basic of the flow layout, border layout, and grid layout. Thank you and have a great day to everyone.